of the year and is here to discuss every angle of the issues of the day. You can reach Barry by calling 212-391-2800. Now, here's WOR's Barry Gray.
Thank you and good evening. And as I speak to you, ensconced in the WOR studios just off Times Square in New York, we are awaiting my colleague Bob Grant, who's at the Republican National Convention in San Diego. It's more than 3,000 miles away because no crow has made the trip. Are you there? Bob, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I've been listening low these many days, and you've given me a front seat at everything that's happened.
Well, that's what we're trying to do, Barry.
Bob, tell me, this last group that you had, Peter King and Myrtle Whitmore, and who else?
We had Senator Bill Frist, who is the only medical doctor from the state of Tennessee. We had Pete Domenici, chairman of the Budget Committee in the United States Senate. We had the indefatigable peripatetic Al D'Amato. We had Congressman Mike Forbes. I mean, people are walking by, they're coming in, and it's building. Barry, I don't know what kind of impression the overall reporting is giving this convention, but I must tell you, there is a feeling of well-being. I've never seen such pleasantness at an event like this, and it's not orchestrated. Haley Barbour didn't come down and order everybody to be happy.
You've made it come through exactly that way, Bob. I haven't gotten the feeling of rehearsal for one moment. The one thing I wanted to ask, what was your reaction to Susan Molinari last night?
Well, I thought Susan, like you, Barry, I've known her for many years. We both interviewed her many times, and so we know her demeanor. We know we're like members of the family. And I felt that on a performance level, she was not really as spontaneous, and I can understand that. I felt she wasn't as spontaneous as she would have been otherwise. She was a little nervous, but on balance, I think she did very well.
What do you think of the baby being there?
Oh, who was going to watch the baby? They had Papa, they had Grandpa.
That's a picture I want to keep that picture in my mind. Guy Molinari putting the baby in his grandchild's mouth.
And, of course, Guy's a new grandpa. That's his first and only grandchild. You could see he was enjoying it. Naturally, some people are going to say, they were doing it for the camera. Well, whether they were doing it for the camera or not, I liked it.
It was beautiful. How are your rooms? Or shouldn't I ask?
You could ask. Barry, I have the smallest bathroom I have ever been in. I really have. I have to go outside to shave, I swear.
I think it's your pal Jackie Mason's line. You have to leave the room to change your mind.
Yeah, well, Barry, it's incredibly small. Now, on the other hand, Marilyn Cutler, the alleged producer of the program, I just said alleged because she came walking by. She has a very large bathroom, but that's all right.
I haven't heard from Marilyn in a couple of days. I guess she's producing the program for Brian Gumbel.
Let me tell you, she's been working very hard.
I can tell. Now, what are your I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know where she gets her energy because, come to think about it, I do. She eats constantly.
That's the reason. Now, what are your plans? I know you're broadcasting from there tomorrow, and then what?
Then we're going to get on a plane and get back to New York so that I can do the show live from our studios where you are right now.
And you'll be across the hall on Monday night or Friday.
I'll be there Friday night.
Friday night.
I'll be there Friday. Yeah, I want to do the show Friday.
And then a couple of weeks and off you go to Chicago.
Maybe. I tell you, I'm tired. Right now, I don't feel like going to Chicago. But if the station wants me to, I will.
As you look back on this next year and the year after that, what's going to come to mind? What will you remember the most?
I think what I will remember the most is the fact that San Diego is an incredibly livable city. I mean, it is just when you live in New York. There's Congressman Steve Stockman walking by. He'd been on... See, people keep walking by. As a matter of fact, if I sounded a little distracted a moment ago, it's because not too far away from where I am, Sam Donaldson is arguing with somebody. I don't think you can hear them. I don't think this microphone is picking it up, but he is arguing with somebody, looking very agitated. I can't read lips. I have no idea what he's being said, but he's very upset with some other talk show host.
He's probably complaining about his laundry service.
Could very well be.
Yeah. He's
Barry, I understand Ted Koppel left here
I heard.
Go home.
I hear. It's fascinating to me. I'd like to know the true story. I wonder what happened.
He claims, if you can believe this, that there was no story to report. There was no reason for him to be here.
That's ridiculous.
Of course it is. Maybe he's got a Borregas. I don't know what the heck, something.
What do you say to the fact that the rating figures show a drop-off at every network? People are not watching as much as they thought they would.
I think the drop-off in rating began when we went to the primary methodology of selecting candidates. Barry, you remember, I know, those exciting days when the nominee wasn't a sure thing, and even if it was, there was something unique about those conventions. Mr. Speaker, Alabama cast 26 votes for Gray.
You did that.
I don't know. It was just a little different. I really don't know, Barry.
I can remember when FDR flew to Chicago in the middle of the night to accept the nomination of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it was just a different period, Barry. I don't know if people are saturated too much with all this, but I read USA Today. They had a quote of mine in there. A reporter quoted me correctly for a change, and it said that talk radio is looming larger and larger. We just keep getting bigger. And Barry, I don't know how that makes you feel, having been ahead of the pack all those years ago, but. You were doing talk radio when other guys were saying, and now number one on the chart is...
Makes me feel great, Bob, and I credit you almost totally for what's happened in talk radio. You and a very small coterie around the country are keeping it alive, and what worries me is that we only hear the mean voices, just the meanness.
Well, to a great extent, that's true. I wouldn't say, speaking of meanness, that wouldn't sound right, but there's somebody that wants to talk to you. Do you want to talk to him on the radio, Marilyn?
Hi, Barry. It's I. How are you?
You put your sandwich down.
Yeah, I did. Oh, God. It's true. I eat all day.
I know.
I'm going to give you some of the local flavor. We had breakfast with Fred Dicker. And
by the way, I'm glad you said that. If anybody at the New York Post is listening, Fred Dicker's on vacation. The guy, every time I see him, he's in shorts.
He's on a cruise.
He said to me today at breakfast, he said, I understand the New York delegation is going on a cruise. He said, I wonder what time we leave. We leave. I said, well, I'm going to work. I'm going to be on WOR. I'm going to do my show.
Sounds like the Fred Dicker I know and love. What else, Marilyn?
Well, let's see. We have breakfast each morning with the New York delegation. And it's at the, what's it called, the Esplanade?
Yes.
The Esplanade is on a beautiful lawn overlooking the sea. With the mountains in the background. And the New York delegation, and they have a tremendous amount of decorum. They're very, very enthusiastic, but they're always very understated.
Well, they wear suits and ties to breakfast.
Exactly.
Of course.
Exactly.
Well,
and we have fresh squeezed orange juice and plenty of coffee, and you know Bob for his coffee.
Yeah. Marilyn, you'll forgive me, but I've got a program to do.
Okay.
Let me tell you what.
Wait, I've got a congressman here who would like to join in as well.
Who's that?
How are you?
It's
Steve Stockman.
Exactly.
How are you, sir?
We're fantastic. We want to know how New York's doing.
New York is doing just fine. We're still part of the union.
Well, it's so tough here. Bob's out here suntanning out here all day long. It's so rough, but he says he's doing it for his country.
Well, I'm sure he is. Bob, I thank you. I thank you very. I look forward to Friday night, and I'll hear in detail what's going on.
All right, Barry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're on WOR. Mr. Bob Grant, my colleague, is on nightly on WOR from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. New York time. That was Marilyn Cutler, who paused on her way from the buffet table, and Congressman Stockman. I guess Congressman Stockman, I've got a lot of stuff to talk to you about, and we will discuss it. My phone number is 391-2800, 391-2800. You call if you have any comment. I'd like very much to hear your comment about Susan Molinari's State of the Union speech, or keynote speech, or Elocution 101. Now this.
Quick, what station are you listening to right now? WOR.
Hello, Barry.
Hi, Jeff.
Barry, I listen to All News Radio, and I read Ed Koch, and I read the New York Times, and I also listened to Tom Brokaw about Susan Molinari. And it seems Ed Koch was the only one who was candid enough to say the truth about Susan Molinari's
What did he say? I didn't hear him.
He said in a word, he said it was themeless and uninspired, which I thought was exactly right.
I don't disagree with that. I thought she was probably scared to death. And she was out of her weight class. Look, Colin Powell had done the speech the day before. He was nothing short of magnificent. He used the English language beautifully. He had things to say, and he said it. And I thought the speech was rather demeaning because it was attacking the president rather than promulgating the values that Susan and the Republican Party stand for.
Well, she's a young woman. I don't know if she wrote the speech herself.
I don't know.
But as I did read Mr. Koch, he did say it was themeless. It kind of rambled, and I thought someone may have done better.
Well, I have it right here, and I'll look at it in the next break. But I thank you, Kathy in New York. Kathy.
Yes. Good evening, Barry.
Good evening.
I thought she was great, with lots of courage, and she's today's woman, and that's what she represents. And I wish I had a daughter just like her. And as for Ed Koch, that liberal, couldn't say anything good about anybody.
Well, you're not far wrong there. He does have a mean streak.
Yes, I wonder why he never married Beth Meyerson. I remember years ago when he was campaigning.
Well, that's a very personal issue. I guess they had to make that decision.
Yes, maybe Stephen Solarz made that decision for them that day.
I don't know, but ma'am, it's none of our business, is it?
Certainly my business that he misrepresented my area. And lied.
I know. Steve on a car phone. Nice lady. Steve?
Remember when you and Jack Eigen and men like you were filling the airwaves 50 years ago in the middle of the night?
This is true. Thank you.
And it was very enjoyable then, and it is now as well.
Thank you, sir.
I thought what Congressman Molinari had to say, or the way she delivered it, was not nearly so important as her presence and what she represents in today's world. And I think the Republican Party in particular could benefit very greatly by just observing her as a working mother in a family of two working people with an infant to take care of, and she truly represents what's happening in America today. I have my own children who are all married. They're all family workers.
Hold it. Let's be fair. The two parents earn about $300,000 a year.
That is true.
They have fantastic health plans and coverage because of their membership in the House of Representatives.
The best in the country.
The best there is. There are very few people that can aspire to that lifestyle that are amongst the working middle class in America.
I think you're right about that. You've pulled me up short, and I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. Eli in Westchester. Eli?
Barry.
Yes.
Hi. How you doing? I thought she was over her head as well. I thought she was extremely nervous. Did you happen to see J.C. Watts's speech?
I thought he was brilliant.
I thought he did an excellent job also, although, again, I'm very much agitated by him making that in front of the Republicans, in that I think he turned his back on his people. I think there's not a more mean-spirited group than the Republicans, and especially this group, and what they're doing to African Americans. So in that respect, I hold it against him, but I thought it was a brilliant speech.
What do you think of Colin Powell?
I thought he was also, and I feel the same for him. In fact, he was booed, I understand, when he talked about affirmative action.
Yes, he was.
And a few other things, but I thought...
Yeah, but listen, you say booed. There were maybe 8 people that booed. We're talking about millions of Americans. who agree with his point of view.
I thought his delivery and his, as you said, I thought it was brilliant.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
391-2800, Phil in New Jersey.
Good evening, Barry.
Good evening.
It's an honor to talk to you, and a pleasure.
Thank you.
I forcing myself to watch the Republican convention. It makes me ill, you know. One of the few times I have to agree with Eli from Westchester that, you know, it was very mean-spirited. I thought the Molinari speech, I thought the Kay Bailey Hutchinson speech, you know, they just had an open forum to take shots at the president. Of course, you know, the Democrats will probably do the same thing, but I just wish for once the politicians, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or Independents, would just stick to the issues.
Well, it's interesting to me that more and more people, and I certainly include General Powell, more and more people, and Senator Dodd pointed it up last night on CNN, are beginning to talk about the meanness that's affecting us as a nation. We are not talking about taxes. We're not talking about affirmative action. We're not talking about children. We're not talking about poverty. We're not talking about unwed mothers. We're not talking about education. Instead, we're busily lambasting each other with mean-spirited things, and I don't think it has any place in the campaign.
Exactly right. You know, as far as I'm concerned, Barry, when I think of the Republican Party, I'll always think of them as the party of the rich, and they don't...
Well, that's no longer true, and the fact is, I've heard some Democrats say some awful things about the other side.
On both sides. But you're right.
It's just wrong for any of us to do it.
We have to stick to the issues because we have a lot of problems in this country. Listen, Barry, have a great show.
Thank you,
sir. I love you.
Thank you. 391-2800. Tom in Point Pleasant.
Yes, yes, Barry. I'd like to comment on Colin Powell's speech.
Okay.
I thought he was the epitome of an affirmative action candidate. It was a mediocre speech. It really was debasing to think that he gave that speech at a Republican convention who stands for no affirmative action. We want to control our borders. He's the antithesis of what that platform states.
You said it's a mediocre speech?
Oh, absolutely. He's a mediocre person. He's there because...
I thank you. We don't have anything to say to each other. I think you're a boob. The next call in a moment. I'm Barry Gray, 391-2800, and let's talk about other news, but you can continue to talk about politics if you wish. I can't believe that someone would call up and say it was a mediocre speech. In light of the speaker and in light of his background and his career, the caller did a great deal for his country. He gave blood at the local pool parlor. There was some fella hit by a billiard cue, and they needed blood in a hurry. By the way, this out of Washington, most of the New Jersey Democrats concede that the Republican convention in San Diego has gone smoothly. They gave Colin Powell's speech generally good notices. They panned Governor Whitman's remarks yesterday. Whitman likened her tax cuts in New Jersey to Bob Dole's proposal to reduce taxes by 15%. And there's a stretch. Former New Jersey Secretary of State says the Democrats will be sure to point out Whitman's shortcomings in Chicago later this month. And their Democratic State Committee Chairman, Tom Byrne, says he doesn't know if all the speeches will move that many votes. He says the convention almost seemed a little too programmed. And the investigators are looking at rows 17 to 28 of TWA Flight 800 in the search for the cause of the explosion that killed all aboard the aircraft 4 weeks ago. And the source said that we speculate that some kind of event took place between those rows. The seats were in the front of the coach section above the center fuel tank, an area from which little has been found in the search of the Atlantic Ocean bottom. Investigators say the pieces that have been recovered show evidence of an extensive fire. And other sources said today that the center fuel tank appears to have exploded as much as 20 seconds after an initial blast closer to the front of the plane. Investigators want to examine everything from the cabin section, the seats, the carpeting, the interior wall, and the overhead bins for any evidence of a bomb better than a hard surfaced wreckage. We suspect, I'm quoting now, the spokesperson, we suspect these pieces are in a debris field, an area that's 3 inches, and then it stops, referring to the area of wreckage closest to Kennedy International Airport, where authorities say the first pieces to separate from the plane were likely to fall. I'm going to pause briefly, and then I'm going to bring you up to date on Crown Heights, which is fascinating. It's a story that is unending, thank God.
WOR
912-800 Al in Queens.
Yeah. Listening to some of the people complaining to you about how mean-spirited and they shouldn't be criticizing Clinton and so forth, I always think of Ann Richard about the silver foot in his mouth, and those people probably cheered when she said that.
I'm sure you're right.
And Ted Kennedy, where was George? I mean, they trampled on this guy, and the media did not criticize that for being mean-spirited.
Well, I don't know about the media, but I did.
Okay, well, I'm glad you did.
Yes, I did.
But by and large, they were saying, but Ann Richards was lionized for years.
I know she was.
So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
And I feel that Jack Temp has turned this thing around totally.
Oh, I agree with you. I agree. Thank you. Rich on the car phone. Rich?
Yeah, hi. Just calling in response to your comment about the viewer participation on the convention, and I am a Republican. I have been washed off the ballot for the second time in 2 years.
Why is that?
They claim that I'm not a resident of the state of New York long enough, which is a cock and bull story if I've ever heard one. I was born and raised here. But back to the convention, listening to these speeches out there, the big tent and all that is such a bunch of hogwash after what D'Amato and the rest of the Republicans put us through here in New York, washing all the other candidates off the ballot and dragging them through court and whatnot. People are so disgusted with the status quo, I think they've just had enough, and it's such a sad situation.
And who will you vote for?
Who am I going to vote for? I really haven't decided that yet.
Yeah.
And, I know it won't be Bill Clinton, let's put it that way, but...
So it's going to be either Mr. Dole or Mr. Perot?
Myself, I know you're not a Buchanan supporter, but I myself was a delegate for Mr. Buchanan, so I went through all this during the presidential primary, and then again with myself trying to get on the ballot.
What do you think his future is?
Pat Buchanan?
Yeah.
Listening to the whole platform, it sounds as if Pat Buchanan is up there, but when you listen to these people speak, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And as far as the Colin Powell situation, this is a laugher to me. The angry white Americans in this country who put the Republicans in control of both houses are not going to be out there supporting a man who gets up and says that he is a staunch supporter of affirmative action and a pro-choice advocate or whatever else he said.
Well, are you talking about Kemp or Powell?
Colin Powell.
Yeah, but Colin Powell's not running.
No, I understand that, but it just seems like to have this man up on a pedestal and everybody else has to stick to a script out there except for him.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do understand. And what will you do about Kemp?
Well, I happen to like Kemp, most of his stands, but, it remains to be seen what's going to happen.
Okay.
Like Proposition, was it 187 in California?
187.
I am very much for that. I understand he wanted to shoot it down. So stuff like that we don't see eye to eye on.
All right. Well, you don't make a campaign out of one issue.
You got that right, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Kurt in Connecticut. Kurt.
Barry, this is Kurt Teacher. I'm thrilled to talk to you.
Thank you, sir.
I can tell you why the ratings are down for the network shows. It's because everybody's watching C-SPAN. I mean, C-SPAN, you get an honest presentation. I was shocked at the difference between switching back from C-SPAN, which I've watched the whole thing on, and switching to the other channels like CNN and the others. And it just wasn't the same show.
Well, I've watched C-SPAN and CNN. I have not watched the networks because I'm not aware that the networks have been doing any of the coverage.
Well, they showed like CNN, right? CNN. There's another channel. I think maybe it's Fox, but I would switch to the other two and just see what, make a one-to-one comparison as to what the real world is versus the managed news media. And it was really shocking. Like, you didn't see, by omission, they censored a lot of things.
Well, I don't know whether it was censorship, but every time I turned on, they were doing their regular programming, and I'm not interested in their regular programming.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Don in Rockland County. Don.
Hi, Barry.
Hi.
Barry, I have a feeling that the conventions are not getting viewership because they don't look that interested in it. They're on for 1 hour. It looks like a show, a political show.
Oh, they're on for a lot more than 1 hour. I'm talking about CNN and C-SPAN. They're on for hours and hours.
Well, that is if you're really interested in it, but it looks like the networks aren't interested in it.
That's true.
They're covering it as much as they want to, which is not a lot. It used to be years ago. It started at 7 p.m., I remember, with Huntley Brinkley. They would be on from gavel to gavel. It seemed you really got a head up by going into the convention and just getting a flavor of it. And then next thing you know, it's 11, 12 o'clock at night, and you're watching speech after speech, and you're really getting into it.
Well, you've mentioned a couple of giants. I don't think the era of Huntley and Brinkley can ever be recaptured. We don't have any Huntleys and Brinkleys around today, unfortunately. Or John Chancellor or Mel Allen and all of the great ones that made things come alive for us.
But, Barry, what's out there is good enough. I mean, these guys are bright, and they're interesting, and I like to watch it. But what I'm seeing in the Republican convention, it looks like it's so scrubbed sterile. There's a sterility about it. I just don't... I'm a Democrat, and I'm sort of biased, maybe a biased opinion, but I just don't feel there's any meat there. There's nothing I can stick my teeth in.
Did you like Colin Powell?
Yeah, it was okay. So, what else is new? I didn't like Susan Molinari. That was it's a perfect high school speech from a valedictorian.
Yeah.
And the way she delivered it, her cadence, everything sounded like a high school speech. I even said to my son, "This is a high school speech."
Yeah.
It was. They could have picked if it was reversed. They should have had Susan Molinari on Monday night, and Colin Powell should have had the keynote speech. Everyone was tuned in for that. And it slipped by. His speech was wonderful. Yeah. I thought he was terrific. Okay. I was sorry that he wasn't a Democrat.
Okay.
After that speech. And Barry, you're the best, Barry.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I just think J.C. Watts was just stole the show last night. I think it was one of the best political speeches I've ever seen in my lifetime.
He was excellent.
And I am just baffled by the person who called and said that he thought that he had sold black Americans out. I thought he was so inspirational to all Americans.
Beauty in the eye of the beholder. You never know what is going through some person's mind in reaction to something that's happening. I'll never get over it.
And that was not carried by the networks. So unless people had cable, they would not get to see that. As same with Reagan's the video that they did on Reagan was not on network.
I know that, and I think that's an outrage.
It certainly is.
I think the networks ought to be told, and radio and TV, that the medium belongs to us. They own the physical property, but the rights of the facilities, the air belongs to us. And we better be served properly, or we're going to have a different kind of a system.
We may actually have some real outcry over this, I think, because he was so beloved by all Americans, and especially that he has Alzheimer's now.
Well, I think it's terrible that a small group of people decide what the millions of us are going to hear and see.
I agree.
It's wrong.
I just also want to say, I don't know if anyone has said this, but I have to say, Susan Molinari's baby was wonderful. What a good baby she was through that whole thing for hours and hours. I found that remarkable.
I think it's wonderful, but I wonder what she is going to think about 20 years from now. What was all that noise about? Okay?
Maybe 5 years from now.
These tall people that are jumping and screaming.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you. George in Queens. George.
Mr. Barry Gray.
Yes.
Congratulations. That was the most heartwarmingest interview I ever listened to. you and Mr. Bob Grant, King of Talk Radio, the two gentlemen together.
I thank you. You talked to Bob the other night. I heard you.
And you're great, Mr. Barry Gray.
Thank you.
To interview Mr. Bob Grant 3,000 miles away live, that was fantastic.
Well, it's what happens. You turn on the phone and anything could happen.
Hey, Mr. Barry Gray, you also that gentleman, Mr. Peter King, congressman from Long Island.
Yeah, nice
He's
man.
a fine gentleman.
Okay. I got to go, but I thank you. Thank you. Carla on a car phone.
Hi, Bob. This is the first time I've ever called the radio, and God knows many times I wanted to. I would be so infuriated.
Well,
I
must have done something. What happened?
Not you. I think you're great. I have listened to you for years. I don't want to get into that now because I just want to tell you that last night I was just pulling into a restaurant, and I really wanted to call last night. You had a caller who was speaking about abortion, and what you said afterwards was absolutely true. If we only understand that we can make abortion illegal, but that doesn't mean it will never go on again. And I wish that would be, I'm against abortion, but I'm also against making it illegal.
I agree with you.
I really think that somebody has to be realistic that they're not going to stop it forever.
I agree with you. I think what we were talking about was the fact that none of us are for abortion. I certainly don't want to end a life under any condition. But if people decide to do it and it's a personal decision, they at least can have it done legitimately under perfect sanitized surroundings, hygienically, instead of doing it in a back alley, paying an enormous amount of money for an illegal act that could result in butchery and even more death.